My name is Mark Wilson. I'm the owner of MWD Lifestyles, Style Mark by MWD Lifestyles. My career is a little bit different from some of yours. I actually, I went to college for fine arts as well. I studied painting and textiles. And when I moved to New York City, I graduated on a Friday, and I was playing Saturday morning to New York City, and 25. And I never looked back. $500 to my name, slept with my best friend's sofa until I got an apartment and a job. And my first real job in New York was I did some gallery work. Doesn't pay, don't ever do it. I applied in the New York Times for a textiles position as a textile sales and designer. So that's when you can still get a job in the New York Times. We won't age myself. I interviewed, they hired me right on the spot. I worked for a small private company called Howard Kaplan Fabrics, which is a very high-end textiles company at the time. Then moved on to the company I did work for was called Western Textiles, which was a corporation based out of Chicago. I became their national salesperson who worked in liaison between both the design teams and the retailers. So I traveled nationally and internationally, bought and sold textiles, did the whole 9 yards for 8 years. Came in on a Friday after from LA to New York, whole week trip, and was fired on by that afternoon. The entire company was bought out by Robert Allen, and the whole entire company was wiped out in one afternoon. I signed a non-disclosure clause, I got a year's salary, and I started a new life. I took a year off, decided what am I going to do with my life. I didn't want to go back into textiles. And I had been basically entertaining for a living. You know, it was a very plum job. So, bless you. So, I took a year off. I took 6 months off and traveled and tried to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. I was 35 years old. Ironically, just a really quick segue into that, ironically, I was in Paris at 34, my 34th birthday. And I was there for business. And it was my birthday, and my best friend came to visit me, and we're sitting in the left bank, and we're having this amazing afternoon, and I turned to my best friend and I said, you know what, I have a life that I never thought I could ever have. A middle-class kid from the middle of Missouri. I made more money than anyone in my entire family had ever made, and I was living this so-called dream. And I turned to my best friend and I said, I hate this. I don't want to do this. I said, all I do is travel. I'm sick of it. You know, all your friends think it's so fabulous to travel and it's work. So, years a day later, I had lost my job. Took half a year off, and I decided that I love flowers. I grew up around flowers. My grandparents had spectacular flower gardens when we were growing up as children. And I just remembered how I wanted to be back into nature somehow, instead of this really concrete world that we live in. So I actually went and started apprenticing with Olivier on the Upper East Side. That's who I apprenticed with. I actually went to his shop. I went to Rennie and Reed's, Robert Isabel, and there was a couple of others that I had tried to talk to. But I really loved Olivier's aesthetic. So I go in, I met him, I said, I'd love to work for you and apprentice for you. And he says, well, we don't, beautiful French accent, we don't pay for interns. And I was like, that's okay, I'll do it. And he said, really, you'll do it? He says, can you start now? And I literally started that afternoon, and I apprenticed for Olivier for probably six months to 7 months. I then went on to work for Preston Bailey, Robert Isabel. The name goes on at all the open school guys, several of them were no longer with us. And I learned the trade. Through the course of that, my best friend owned a catering company called Simply Grand Catering at the time. And he was doing a benefit for city kids. Unbeknownst to me, it was 350 people. I just said yes. It was a fall harvest theme. The first, I went to the flower market. I got everything I could, pumpkins, gourds, and fall leaves, and I created 35 tables, just like that. And I sat there, I was too young to realize what a big deal that was, and I just fell madly in love with what we were doing, what I was doing, and I knew this is what I was going to do for the rest of my life. So my career went from there. I went back to several of my corporate clients because they did showrooms twice a year, and I then worked out contracts to style their showrooms twice a year. So that actually is how my business began to grow, just through that. And then I went to other corporate clients and started saying, we could work with you, because I came from corporate. I understood, what the corporate mentality was about doing events, and I started building a corporate clientele base. On the side, I started also doing smaller weddings and things like that. My wedding business is, for me, I'm very particular about what I do in weddings, so I don't go after a lot of weddings. I'm looking for a particular type of client, and that's it. So maybe I'll do 3 weddings an entire year. So through the course of that whole career, I built a business that does weddings, that does bar mitzvahs, that does experiential marketing events, and does corporate gals and not-for-profit gals. So it's a little bit about me. It goes on. I would have said partnership as well. I hated it for days. Came into being. I think that my favorite style, for me right now, I'm still very much into this garden, very lush green, white, very plush feeling. Interestingly enough, both of the weddings that I have booked already are both English garden feeling, and I love that lush, natural, organic feeling.
The one do, the one don't for the caterer. People laugh, like, there's more here that we don't know. The one do, the one don't for the caterer.
I'm going to tell it, I'm not going to say names, but I work with a caterer that consistently tried to gouge a client. And I asked them to please stop. That is your major don't. Listen to the client. We're here as a team, the planner, the designer, we're all here as a team to try to make that day so incredibly special for that client that, we're like psychiatrists and we're trying not to make it more difficult than it already is. So for the caterers, it's like, please don't try to constantly upsell. We are there to help you figure out. We know what the client wants, and we're definitely, if they want something more, then we'll definitely that. That's the don't. The do for a caterer. Make sure the food is hot, be on time, and have food prepared in a timely manner and placed. Timely? Timing.
And Joanne, for the photography, one do, one don't for photography.
I think one of the most important things about a really good photographer is never notice the scene. They're always, they're there taking these amazing, beautiful experiences and moments for their clients and their bride and groom, but they're just not seen. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
They're not seen. Be peripheral. And one of the don'ts is like one of my unfortunates was don't drink water. Don't drink. This is not your party. I'm more of a floral designer than a designer than I am a planner. I think one of the things that I find really, really important when I'm, sitting down with the bride and groom for the first time and getting to know them is just trying to get to know who they are as human beings and what their aesthetic is, and not pushing your own ideologies and ideas of your design set onto them. You're designing for them. So listen to them, get an understanding of who they are and how they want their wedding to be, and design around that. The culture.
Yeah.
Really depends on the culture. For example, like if we're doing an Indian wedding, like tradition is really important. Cultural tradition is very, very important. So in that mandap, that's part of their tradition, so that's going to be really important to them. And then maybe the dinner is more a little bit of the modern side, so they have to balance out that. And that's the first example.
So this next section is I'm going to talk about a study, and I'm going to ask the panelists to respond to that. And I'll give them some time to think about this. And I'll give you more details before I ask you to respond. But the study showed that there's an inverse relationship between the money you spend on a wedding and the success of a marriage. That is, the study said the more money you spend, the greater the likelihood of divorce. Now, let me give you the details. It's not quite as simple as that. And then I want you to respond whether your experience supports that, or contradicts that, or if it's that's partially true, why is that true? I have my own ideas, which I'll share at the end because I read the study. So the study was done at Emory University in Atlanta, and they looked at 3,000 brides, which is not a huge number, but a significant number to be significant. And the question was, you know, the money they spent on the wedding versus the rate of divorce. And what they found was that using sort of the average of $5,000 to $10,000 on a wedding, which is the average for people, I realize you guys do weddings that are many, many zeros beyond that. They found that the people that spent 0 to 1K were 53% less likely to get divorced. People that spent 1 to 5K were 18% less likely to get divorced. People that spent $10 to $20,000 were 29% more likely to get divorced, and people above 20 were 46% more likely to get divorced. Now, the other element of the study, so it doesn't sound all bad, was there was a positive relationship between the number of guests at the wedding and the success of the marriage. So the greater the number of guests, the more likely the marriage will last. The greater amount you spend on that, the less likely. So, one at a time, just tell me, you know, A, is that your experience? Have you seen that? Do you think that? Do you think I'm just making this up, like alternate facts? So let's start with the end page, yeah. And then,
Much more I can actually add to that. So I don't do that many, but I know that most of my clients, I'm still friends with probably 4, actually 5 of the weddings I've done in the last 10 years. I'm still friends with